wave stringing us along. Just know you're not alone. Gonna make this place your home. Settle down, it'll all be clear. And don't pay no mind to your demons, they'll fill you with fear. And this trouble, it might drag you down. If you get lost, you can always be found. Just know you're not alone. Gonna make this place your home. And I sing, ooh, ooh, ooh. Settle down, 'cause it'll all be clear. And don't pay no mind to our demons, they fill us with fear. You see, trouble, it might drag us down. If we get lost, we can always be found. No, we're not alone. We can make this place our home.
Thank you, Chris. Chris is a good friend of mine and a colleague at my church. On behalf of Mary and Geoff's family, I want to welcome all of you here today, those of you who are here in person and those who have joined us via the live stream. As we celebrate and remember Geoff's life, I'm here as a SpinSheet spouse who also happens to be a United Methodist pastor, but more importantly, as a friend of Mary and Geoff's. It is my privilege to be here with you today. One of the best books that I know that speaks to the situation that we find ourselves in the horrible wake of Geoff's all too soon death, is Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I've Loved. Author Kate Bowler, a woman who had spent her young career working her way up the academic ladder, finally landing a great position at Duke Divinity School, gave birth to a first child, a son, discovers that she has stage 4 cancer and that she may die. And so her book is born out of her wrestling with her own faith and her own mortality. Everything happens for a reason, she writes. The only thing worse than saying this is pretending that you know the reason. I've had hundreds of people tell me the reason for my cancer. Because of my sin, because of my unfaithfulness, because God is fair, because God is unfair, because of my aversion to Brussels sprouts. I mean, no one is short of reasons. So if people tell you this, make sure you are there when they go through the cruelest moments in their lives and start offering your own. When someone is drowning, the only thing worse than failing to throw them a life preserver is handing them a reason. When someone is drowning, the only thing worse than failing to throw a life preserver is handing them a reason. She goes on to say that when everything else gets stripped away, the hard-earned truth that she discovers in the midst of her own pain and suffering and uncertainty is not a reason, but a rock to stand on. And it is this: God is here, we are loved, it is enough. Friends and family, we are not here, and I am not here as a pastor, to offer superficial reasons for Geoff's death. That just won't cut it, given the depth of pain that we're in and the unfairness of it all. Instead, we are here clinging to one another for love and for strength, to claim that even now, God is here, we are loved, and it will be enough. In the 46th Psalm, we read, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in time of trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with tumult, and our hearts have been trembling. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. And we find these words to put the wind back in our own luffing sails from the prophet Isaiah. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. God does not faint or grow weary. He gives power to the faint, and he strengthens the powerless. Even youth will faint and be weary, and the young will fall exhausted. But those who wait for the Lord will renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Let us pray. Eternal God, you have shared with us the life of Geoff Ewenson. Before he was ours, he is yours. And for all that Geoff has given us to make us what we are, and for that of him which lives and grows in each of us, and for his life that in your love will never end, we give you thanks. As we gather today to offer Geoff back into your arms, we pray for comfort in our loneliness, strength in our weakness, and give us courage to face the future unafraid. Oh God, draw those of us who remain in this life closer to one another. Make us faithful to serve one another, and give us to know that peace and that joy which is life eternal. Through Jesus Christ. Amen. I'm going to turn the mic over to Ashley.
A Marriage by Michael Blumenthal. You are holding up the ceiling with both arms. It's very heavy, but you must hold it up or else it will fall down on you. Your arms are tired, terrible tired, and as the day goes on, it feels as if either your arms or the ceiling will soon collapse. But then, unexpectedly, something wonderful happens. Someone, a man or a woman, walks into the room and holds up their arms up to the ceiling beside you. So you finally take down your arms. You feel the relief of respite, the blood flowing back to your fingers and arms, and when your partner's arm's tired, you hold up your own to relieve him again. And it can go on like this for many years without the house falling down.
Hello all, I am Alex Iliff. I'm Mary's brother and Geoff's brother-in-law. Over the past week, a huge number of people have reached out to me and to my family and to Mary to offer help. And they offer help because they're kind. And they offer help because they're loving. But one thing I've noticed is that they offer help because they feel honored to spend their time and their energy to help. at a time like this, just as they felt honored to know Geoff. They felt honored to be in his company. They felt honored to have a connection with Geoff. And so now, to honor their connection, they reach out to help. My connection to Geoff is because he married my sister. Which is lucky. Very lucky. And so, like so many of you, I've tried to help. And on Saturday night, Mary asked me to look for a song by Jason Isbell that would work for today. And Geoff and I talked a lot about music. And he had often recommended Jason Isbell, and I hadn't really looked into him. But I dove in and quickly found the right song. In fact, I think it's just the right song. And the song is called If We Were Vampires, which is a ridiculous name for a song. And I'll tell you, it's not a ridiculous song. It's a beautiful song. It's a sad song, and on a day like today, it's a very sad song. And I know when I sent it to Mary, she said she'd heard it before, and in fact, she and Geoff had listened to it together, and they'd cried. But the message of the song is not sad. The message of the song is heartening. The message of the song is uplifting. And the message of the song is this: if we love dearly, and we love it all, and we live well, it's because we're not here forever. We're not here forever, and so we reach out to one another and reach out desperately for each other's hands. And if there's anybody I know who lived that message and who understood that message and lived it well, it was Geoff. Geoff lived well. Geoff loved well. He was a marvel at spreading his joy. And so I ask you all to listen to this song. Think of Geoff and honor him by living well. Looks as though I'm going to have to sing this song. I don't think that would be honoring Geoff.
It's not the long flowing dress that you're in, or the light off of your skin. The fragile heart you protected for so long. Where the mercy questions like directions to the truth. It's knowing that this can't go on forever. Likely one of us will have to spend some days alone. Maybe we'll get 40 years together, but one day I'll be gone. One day you'll be gone. If we were vampires and death was a joke, we'd go out on the sidewalk in the snow, laugh at all the lovers and their plans. I wouldn't feel the need to hold your hand. Baby, time running out is a gift. I'll work hard till the end of my shift and give you every second I can find. And hope it isn't me who's left behind. It's knowing that this can't go on forever. Likely one of us will have to spend some days alone. Maybe we'll get 40 years together. One day I'll be gone. One day you'll be gone. It's knowing that this can't go on forever. Likely one of us will have to spend some days alone. Maybe we'll get 40 years together. One day I'll be gone. One day you'll be gone.
This is from Romans. Love from the center of who you are. Don't fake it. Run for dear life from evil. Hold on to dear life to good. Be good friends who love deeply. Practice playing second fiddle. Don't burn out. Keep yourself fueled and aflame. Be alert servants of God, cheerfully expectant. Don't quit in hard times. Pray all the harder. Help those in need. Be inventive in hospitality. Bless your enemies. Don't curse under your breath. Laugh with your happy friends when they're happy. Share tears when they're down. Get along with each other. Don't be stuck up. Make friends with nobodies. Don't be the great somebody. Don't hit back. Discover beauty in everyone. If you've got it in you, get along with everybody.
Giving somebody a heads up, we have another song coming later in this service, so I'm not sure who's in charge of that song, but somebody's going to magically make Clare Island appear, I'm sure. I want to thank Mary. I want to thank Nick and Ashley. I want to thank Patsy and Geoff for sharing memories about their son with me. I want to thank Chaz for an amazing obituary that appeared in the Capital Gazette, with an assist, I'm told, from Dave and Molly. We're here today with love on our hearts and tears welling up in our eyes, flooded with memories and emotion. We are in shock and yet grateful. We are numb, yet feeling so intensely. We are so sad and so full of love. We're here to celebrate and remember the life of Geoff Ewenson, a totally devoted husband and soulmate, a faithful son and brother, a really fun uncle, a fiercely loyal friend, a coach, a mentor, and from all accounts, a pretty damn good sailor, too. We are here to gather in the company and strength of one another to celebrate his good but all too brief life, and to offer him back to God, even as we cry out to God for comfort and mercy, for healing and for strength. Jeffrey Michael Ewenson was born on July the 13th, 1970, to Patsy and Geoff Ewenson in Upper Montclair, New Jersey. My grandmother was from Nutley, New Jersey. In the earliest years of his life, he moved with his family to Ohio, then Long Island, then outside of Chicago, where they added a sister. Ashley was born, I think, around 1975. A move to Newport, Rhode Island would be the last for the family. It was here that Geoff and Ashley and then Nick, who arrived on the scene 10 years behind Geoff, they would do most of their growing up. As a kid, Geoff loved sports from an early age, and playing hockey, and where he would literally lie on the ground and let his mom dress him. And of course, sailing. With a dad, Big Geoff, who had literally sailed halfway around the globe, I'm told the wrong way, by his kids, from Australia, landed in Newport and met and fell in love with Patsy, his mom. Sailing was a non-negotiable for all three kids. And it was Geoff who took to it earliest and with the most passion. Patsy told me when she would go to check on Geoff, supposed to be doing his homework upstairs, she'd instead find him drawing pictures of sailboats. That was the shape of things to come. Geoff was also famous for losing his stuff from little on up. His mom would make him write his name in every single article of clothing that he owned, tie his wallet around his neck, and still they had to backtrack to yacht clubs and schools and fields to find his coats and his sweatpants and his shirts and more that had inevitably been left there. Ashley and Nick were both describing the close relationship that they enjoyed with Geoff, who invested in each of their lives in different ways because of the different age gaps. For Ashley, he was the big brother who showed her the ropes when she joined him at Tabor Academy for high school, where he was a senior and she was a freshman. They got to sail together on the sailing team there, and then she followed him to the University of Rhode Island, where they shared similar experiences. For Nick, who was 10 years younger, Geoff was the big brother who still loved getting down on the floor to play G.I. Joes, and mentored and coached his little brother in sailing, not just in his growing up years, but all throughout his adulthood too. He told me how Geoff was always looking to find opportunities and teams and regattas that could include Nick, some that Nick said he probably wasn't really quite qualified for. He talked about what a cool thing it was to be treated by his brother as a sailing peer and not just a little brother anymore as he grew in his own adult sailing career. Both Nick and Ashley told me that they would regularly still call Geoff for counsel whenever they were working on their boats and trying to troubleshoot their problems. The Ewensons loved being anchored in Newport, that other mecca of sailing, and didn't travel much as a family except for sailing races all up and down the East Coast, though Nick and Ashley were recalling for me one memorable family vacations to the Orange Bowl in Miami, Florida, several years, and one lengthy trip back to your home country in Australia, where you extended your time to take in America's Cup, and Geoff had to head back to school. Geoff's illustrious sailing career is well known to many of you. He started winning races and showcasing his talent, both innate and hard-won from a young age. And that success followed him through his years at Tabor and the University of Rhode Island, where he twice sailed to All-American status. In fact, he was good enough to be on the cusp of making the Olympic team in Finns on 3 separate occasions, finishing 6th and then 2nd and then 2nd again at the Olympic trials. He had support from his whole family and community along the way as he chased his dreams, but it was Patsy who was always the biggest cheerleader for her Wonder Boy. And she had t-shirts printed up one campaign, to Geoff's total embarrassment, to prove it. While his beloved Newport was his home base for much of his early life, Annapolis became his adopted hometown back in the late 1990s. I'm told the Ewensons could never quite get over that. It was the Interclub Midwinters at SSA in January of 1997 that would change the course of his life for good, and Geoff would tell you, for the better. Mary remembers a friend pointing out this tall, handsome, out-of-town sailor with the dimples as that's Geoff Ewenson, and he's going to win the race. Turns out he didn't win the race, at least not the B group, where he was also sailing with a second boat. Mary's quick to point out it's not because they didn't sail well, they just didn't read the instructions. They were supposed to go twice around the course. Geoff wasn't really big on details. He may have lost that race, but he won the girl. And that was way more important. He and Mary met at the keg after the race. Sparks started to fly. She invited him to go to Patton's, the local dive precursor to the boatyard, to shoot pool. And then they went out to dinner in Annapolis with Mary's roommate, Leah, who concurred with Mary's whispered, excited assessment that she had just met the most beautiful man in the world. They both loved to tell the story for years. Whenever Geoff would do something foolish or frustrating, he'd always remind Mary, "What did you expect? You had your chance to marry an investment banker, but you met me at the keg." Pretty soon there were lots of trips between Newport and Annapolis as their relationship blossomed quickly. Nick and Ashley remember Geoff talking to Mary on the phone with all the gooey love stuff on a trip down to Florida. And they said, "What happened to our brother?" Mary got up her courage to get on a plane to go up to Rhode Island for St. Patrick's Day weekend with the help of a pitcher of beer at the airport, as she was scared to death of flying. And how her first words to his mom as she was meeting Geoff's extended family were to explain what had happened. "I'm really drunk and I need to go pee." What an opening line to try to win your way into your boyfriend's family. Now by October, Geoff was moving down to Annapolis, but there were a couple conditions that Mary made clear from the start. She would fully support his dream to continue to work to make the Olympic team. It was okay for him to not have a full-time job, but if she was going to feed and house him, he had to be committed to finish what he had started at the University of Rhode Island. You see, he had left during his final semester to work for a sailmaker in Newport. Too good an opportunity to pass up, and he was just credits short of graduating. This included, of all things, having to rectify an incomplete in a one-credit class in sailing. Now, I'm told his mother had a memorable response to this when she found out, but you'll have to ask her. It might have involved profanity-laced feeling of incredulity. He did get the credit after he sweet-talked his way with the professor, and then he worked his way through other courses here at Anne Arundel Community College and then back at the University of Rhode Island, and he earned his degree in 1999, 9 years after he had started. He often joked, lots of people take 9 years to finish school. They're called doctors. Now, ironically, medical care was a recent passion of Geoff's, following his being part of a team of folks who helped to rescue and do CPR on a fellow sailor and friend Carl, who had a heart attack during the Midwinter Interclubs, the same race where he and Mary had met 21 years before. Geoff developed a keen interest in learning new skills and took a wilderness medicine class. And he then took a 7-day class on doing triage medical care as the medical person in charge and earned the highest grade in his class. He and Mary had even talked about him possibly pursuing a career as a paramedic or a nurse if he ever decided to give up his professional sailing and wanted another chapter. It was November of 1998 when Geoff proposed to Mary. A few months earlier at a cousin's wedding, he had approached his mom and told her Mary was the one, even though she wasn't Catholic. And she gave him the family ring she had always promised to give him. Now his cousin Kate had been watching. Katie saw the exchange. She offered to take it back with her to Maryland to get it sized and cleaned. And he'd gotten it back just from her days before when he called Charlie and hemmed and hawed and talked about truck tires for a long time. And then he got it to the main point of his call and he said, "I'd really like your blessing to ask Mary to marry me." Not surprisingly, since Mary's parents absolutely adored Geoff, Charlie gave his blessing and now the ball was in Geoff's court. When Lucy called back only a few minutes later to excitedly congratulate them, he had to grab the wall phone receiver. Remember those wall phones and with the long cords? And he'd go out and whisper that he hadn't asked her yet. And knowing that he could only make Lucy hold this in for so long, he scrapped any plans for a romantic moment and instead simply invited Mary to come out front in her pajamas and shower wet hair to see the crepe myrtle that had just been planted. She thought that was crazy. He presented her with the ring, she said yes, and they were married 6 months later on April 24th, 1999 at St. Margaret's Church, and had the reception back at the Iliff family farm in Arnold. They honeymooned at Disney World, the first of about 10 trips there on their own with family members for races, for their 20th anniversary, for their 20th anniversary again after the first one didn't work out. Not the anniversary part, but the lodging, I think. Geoff not only worked his charm with people, but he also had a big way with dogs. Very quickly, Mary's dog, Kelsey, became Geoff's dog. And when she died, he wanted a puppy right away. He implored Mary, what are we going to do with all this love? From day one, Angus loved his big man. And when Malcolm came along about 18 months ago, he had another dog to pour his love into too. He loved his boys, and they loved him back. Geoff grew up surrounded by family in Newport, knew how important it was to be part of a big family and involved in each other's lives. He immersed himself in Mary's family here in Annapolis, and they in turn fully embraced him, not as a son-in-law or a brother-in-law, but as a son and as a brother. And there was little that Geoff loved more in life than his role as the fun uncle. Is that right? Uncle Geoff to Ashley and Olive's Logan and Wiley, Liz and Brian's Bowden, Alex and Lisa's Gray and Paige, Chaz and Liz's Ginevra, Charles and Avery. And there were trips to Disney World, summer camps in Annapolis, and Aunt Mary and Uncle Geoff's, lots of phone calls, game nights, special outings, so much fun and love that they poured into the nieces and nephews. In so many ways, Geoff was living the dream. He had been able to turn his passion for sailing into a career. Who gets to do that, right? Where people paid him to go all over the world and sail their amazing, expensive boats. He loved the constant challenge and the camaraderie that it afforded him. Nick was telling me that it was the after-race banter and the beers that Geoff cherished as much as the sailing itself. Geoff was way more than an accomplished sailor, but he was so comfortably at home on a boat. He carried such a calm presence for his crew, where he could let out his instincts and his well-honed skills simply take over, and he made everyone around him better too. He loved sharing his expertise and his experience as a high school coach at the Naval Academy, as a mentor to so many in the field, and as a professional coach as well. That was only part of it, though. Geoff was way more than a sailor. The biggest part of his life was getting to share it with Mary, his soulmate, which is why it's so hard today. It's so hard to picture Geoff without Mary or Mary without Geoff. Their lives were just that intertwined. Whenever he wasn't traveling, they went everywhere together, loved to paddleboard and run and sail together, walk their dogs together, listen to music together, stop by Baker's and Company on a Saturday morning together, and that's where I would always run into them. Usually they were on their way to somewhere else. He pitched in whenever he could as an extended part of the SpinSheet, Pop Talk, Fish Talk family, and Mary kept his work finances in order for him too. They made memories traveling mostly for his professional gigs, but occasionally also for fun, and whether it was Bermuda or Kingston or St. Bart's or Clare Island. Even a slightly rainy getaway on a catamaran to the Wye River this past summer. It was all sacred and special. They grew up together, drew out the best in each other, and made each other better. And so happy. They'd found the rarest of gifts, a love that stayed fierce and strong through all of their marriage, a love that kept them both afloat in practical and soulful ways, the kind of love we read about from the book of Romans today. A love from the center. A love that practices playing second fiddle, a love that is spacious and hospitable. A close friend was quoted in Geoff's beautifully written obituary saying, "They were always an inspiration to the rest of us as a couple." So obviously in love. Geoff's generous spirit poured itself out on others in multiple community involvements like Chesapeake Region Accessible Boating, and the one that was most rewarding to him, his work as a captain with athletes serving athletes, which involved pushing wheelchair-bound individuals in races and practices. What a fitting image to remember him by. So how do we deal with the sudden loss of such an incredible, caring, and generous man? how do we move through this? I wish I had a magic bullet that would take away the pain or answer all of our questions. I don't. What I do have are a few guiding closing thoughts, though. First, I want to say that there is power in what we are doing right now. There is power in the very act of sitting side by side. In the movie Wind River, whose ending moved me so much that I actually saw it twice in the movie theaters, Natalie Hansen's an 18-year-old Native American who is brutally murdered. And Corey, an officer with the Fish and Wildlife Department, ends up working the case with an FBI agent. And in the closing scene, he is visiting with Natalie's parents to tell them that they've solved the case. He finds his mother, Annie, sleeping upstairs in her daughter's room, holding on to a piece of her jewelry, nestled among her pictures of her daughter. And Corey gently puts a blanket over her. And then he discovers her dad, Martin, sitting on a partially snow-covered ground out back near the swing set. He'd painted his face in blue and white. He calls it his death mask. He said he sort of made it up. And then Martin, the dad, starts to get choked up. And he says, I just want to sit here and miss her for a minute. Will you sit with me? Will you sit with me? Many of you have had the privilege of sitting with Mary through this. I've had that privilege too. And Mary will need you sitting with her for a long time, as will his family. And my encouragement is for you to know the power of that and to claim how important that is, that we sit with each other. We don't solve everything, but we sit with each other. My second thought is that at this time, it's okay to name our pain and to pray honest prayers. The book of Psalms, which I read from at the very beginning, is a shared book of the Jewish and the Christian faith. It's a collection of honest, from the gut and from the heart kind of prayers. Sometimes God is being praised, and sometimes we are raising a fist to God and saying, why? And it's okay to pray those kind of prayers right now. God can take it. And we have permission to pray from our hearts and to pray honestly, our lament as well as our gladness, our deep sadness alongside of our joy and our celebration. It's also in the Psalms that we get the promise that God will turn our mourning at some point, turn our mourning again into dancing. And finally, I also want to say that while we hope this day begins a process of healing and moving through this loss, not past it, but through it, it's going to hurt for a long time, and that is how it should be, right? We don't let go of the ones we love easily, especially not when we're forced to give them up and say goodbye way too soon. One of my favorite writers, Annie Lamott, puts it this way. She says, someday you will lose someone you can't live without, and your heart will be badly broken. And the bad news is that you never get completely over the loss of your beloved. But this is also the good news. They live forever in your broken heart that doesn't seal back up. And you come through. It's like having a broken leg that never heals perfectly, that still hurts when the weather gets cold. But you learn to dance with a limp. You learn to dance again with a limp. Today we begin the process of healing and learning to dance again with a limp. And knowing Geoff, who was so full of life and who loved life and who loved music, I think he'd still want us to dance. Mary, I know he'd still want you to dance. Thanks be to God for his incredible life. Thanks be to God for this great gathering that gives us strength and where we share his life and his love. Amen.
That's a tough one to follow. Thank you. Can you all hear me? Geoff loved. He loved his parents. He loved Nick and Ashley. His huge extended Ewenson Dwyer family.
He loved his I Live family and his awesome, perfect nieces and nephews. He loved his boys, Angus and Malcolm, and he loved Newport, God's country. He loved sailing, and he loved hockey, and he loved to learn. He loved the Jungle Book, and he loved music. He loved history. He loved to cook, and to sing, and to laugh. I could go on for days and months and years about that man's love. He was brave. He didn't worry. His mantra was, things have a way. The day the mast of the 66-foot boat we were sailing on broke and came down, I was near the shrouds, and Geoff was at the back of the boat. He moved about calmly, marking our position, radioing for help, assessing the boat and the situation. When his eyes met mine, I didn't see the calm I expected. His eyes, burning and intense, he said quietly and forcefully, "Mary, don't touch anything. Stay low and come back here." It was only then that I realized I was right in the line of fire of one of the bent pieces of rod rigging still attached to the mast that was flailing in the water next to us. Geoff didn't panic, and he didn't panic me. He just acted, and he kept me safe. Geoff had a fun-loving, relaxed way about him. But those of you who sailed with him know he was super competitive and super focused once he hit the water. We got a paper a few years back, and we loved sailing together. Geoff encouraged me to start driving the boat, and we chose good sailor friends to sail with us. Guys who, like Geoff, had nothing to prove on the race course, and they were there for the fun of the family program. Geoff is an excellent and patient coach, but for sure there were times he wished he could grab the helm. I trusted him completely, and when he told me to focus on the telltales and the speedo and let him do the looking around, I did it. Sailing in the very competitive Sarasota Winter Series with our friend Mark, as we approached the weather mark with some boats up above us on the ley line, Geoff said, "Okay, we're gonna tack and duck Peter and come right back up." So he counted the tack down, we tacked, and for the first time, I saw that wall of boats. I had no idea which one was Peter, and I headed down to duck what turned out to be the boat, 2 boats behind Peter. Geoff had a few choice words for me, and I didn't hesitate to give a few back. We dug our way back to an acceptable finish, and afterward we discussed the problem over much laughter, especially when Mark chimed in with, "Might be good to communicate just a little bit more." In the same regatta, we got second in a race. As we crossed the line, Geoff shouted to the committee, "How about my wife?" You'd have thought we just won the America's Cup. He was so proud. We got better and better over the season, and we even won some races. Geoff was thrilled to see the fleet stop giving me easy crosses, start tacking on me, and he especially loved it when, after having the same guy reach over me on the starting line just one time too many, I pushed the tiller down and tagged the corner of his boat. For those of you who don't sail, that means I ran right into him. Rather than complain about having to fix the gel coat on our bow, Geoff reveled in telling people, yep, she just wasn't gonna let him get witty with it again. He didn't get nervous in new situations. He wasn't worried he wouldn't fit in, that he wouldn't belong. As one of our friends always says, he's the fun one. He was comfortable in his own skin. He cried in sad movies, and he felt others' pain. In this terrible 2020, he was forever coming home saying things like, I know we don't have any income right now, but I heard a story about how food insecure so many in our community are. Do you think we could at least make a small donation? Geoff didn't set out to make the world a better place. Like so many things, he just did it naturally. It's not that he was selfless or looking to be heralded as a good guy. It's just that doing the right thing came easily to him. He was happy, and he was happiest when the people around him were happy. When we decided to renovate our house, we sat down with the architect, created a budget, selected the builder, and then we played to our strengths. Geoff would oversee the aesthetics, and I would manage the checkbook. The result was that Geoff built our home one $5,000 change order at a time. I'd have gone with builder grade and simple. No heated bathroom floor, no renovated kitchen, etc. You get the idea. Geoff knew better. He made our home and this world a beautiful place. One day, early in our relationship, he asked me what song was playing in my head. I must have looked totally confused, and I said, song? In my head? And he said, you don't always have music playing in your head? Turns out, he always had a soundtrack going. Sometimes he'd burst out laughing about what was playing and wonder where it had come from. I don't have a soundtrack in my head, and I never have. But thanks to Geoff, I have a house full of speakers, an unbelievable playlist, and when I say unbelievable, you wouldn't believe some of the things on his playlist. And his voice telling me that I'm beautiful, that he loves me, and that things have a way. As we worked through the plans for today, I got the word out. You all got it. Anything goes when it comes to attire. I'll probably be wearing jeans and a fleece. And then my sister-in-law, Liz, brought over this dress, and she was right. Geoff loved to get dressed up, and he cleaned up well. And though he told me every day that I was beautiful, whether I was in a ratty regatta shirt and boxers, or in an Armani dress, I know he'd have been especially proud and pleased for me stepping up and wearing this. And he'd have sent Liz a note thanking her for the nudge. Ron already said this, but sometimes Geoff lost things, right, Patsy? Many a time he called me for help finding things. One of his favorite stories was of how he lost his passport while he was in Portugal, and he was in a panic. So he called me for help, and I found it for him over the phone. It was so Geoff not to be embarrassed that he lost it, but proud of me for being able to find it. When we got married, we had a special carbon inlaid ring made for him. We knew he'd probably lose it, and we'd have to replace it many times. But I was prepared to take that gracefully. He never lost. We loved more in 23 years than some people do in 50. Every day, he told me I was beautiful. Every day, he told me he loved me. And I told him I loved him. He loved all of you. And he loved me. And we will always have that. As Geoff would say. Things have a way.
Thank you, Mary, for sharing your heart so beautifully and letting us into that love. We have another song, don't we? And while this song is playing, we're going to pass around a toast, or pass around some beverages. I think. What are the choices here? There's a lemonade. There is prosecco and water. Is that? Are those the three? Tequila. Sorry. How could I confuse tequila with water? Clearly, I was misinformed. So you'll have a chance to just remain seated as the song plays and pick up a beverage. I'll say a closing prayer and a blessing, and then I believe Chance is going to give the closing toast. So that's what's going to be happening next.
Will you meet me on
lemonade coming around along with Prosecco, and so everyone will be served before we get to the moment of toast, and then we'll move into a time following the service of sharing stories. There'll be some light refreshments as well. You're encouraged to see these great pictures at either end of the tent from his early life and his later years as well. It's just they're just two separate slideshows, and your being here today is a great gift. This is what it means to sit with one another and to be with one another, and so we are just so grateful for you being part of this today.
Lemonade or Prosecco on this tray?
We have some more drinks coming forward. You can continue to serve, and as I pray, let us pray. O God of love and of light, at the beginning of time and at the end, you're present to bless us. At our birth and in our dying, in the opening of the day and in its close, in our waking and our sleeping, you are present to bless us. You're the first and last, the giver of every gift, the life without whom there is no life. May we be led to the heart of life's treasure so that we might be bearers of the treasure of love, as Geoff was. Lead us to the heart of the present so that we may live fully. We give you thanks for the gift of Jeffrey Michael Ewenson and for all in him that was good and kind and creative, life-giving and loving. We thank you for his presence in our lives, teaching us about the fullness of life. And we imagine his spirit at work still and ongoing in the rhythm of our lives. And so for the overlapping of the seen and the unseen, heaven and earth, body and spirit, rest and dying and new life, all part of your universal rhythm, we give you thanks. Receive Geoff into your eternal kingdom, send healing for our brokenness of heart, strength for all of our weakness, calm for our troubled spirits, and a releasing of our doubts and our fears. Amen. I'll take one of those. I want to be part of one of those.
Have them raise their hand.
All right, thank you. Anybody else still need a drink?
Lemonades here.
Let me
and
leave you with
water.
this blessing, and then most importantly, we're going to do a toast. And we'll continue this celebration. We'll go forth with God. May God go above you to inspire you, beneath you to undergird you, in front of you to lead you, behind you to encourage you, beside you to be a friend, and within you to give you grace and strength and peace this day and in all the days to come. Amen. You may need to stand.
I'd like to start with two fun facts. First off is that I really appreciate Ron giving me credit for the obituary, but it was Alex and Dave. And it was amazing, and credit where credit is due. So I would like to make a closing toast to my brother-in-law and my friend Geoff. Geoff was family. As you all know, he traveled all the time around the country and around the world, yet somehow he was always there for us when we needed him. Geoff would laugh, his big, booming laugh. He would have fun with our kids, showing them the world in ways that drew from his experience.
his world. He and Mary, you've all heard about it. You know, fun uncle and fun aunt, but you got to see the t-shirt. It's Fonty and Funkle. They provided so much fun. Just endless energy. Do you guys want to go do something? You want to do this? Well, we'll take your kids while you hang out at your house. So Geoff, so vibrant, but he was always calm in tough situations, and always looking out for all of the people he loved. It felt great to be around him, to know he was on our team. We were so lucky to have him as a friend, to have him as family. To Geoff.
To Geoff.
There's food from one of Geoff and Mary's favorite places, Eastport Kitchen. And there's more drinks. And we invite you to stay, mingle safely with each other, keep your distance as much as it's possible to do that. But thank you so much for being